What's up, Liron here, and today we're going to be looking at work by Amanda Hyatt. What's up, Liron here. Thank you for joining me in another episode of Painting Masters with my messy hair in my NBA pajama. And today we're going to talk about Amanda Hyatt, an amazing watercolor painter, also works in oils and perhaps acrylics as well. But I'll be focusing on her watercolor work this time. So Amanda, in her website, she actually defines herself as A-la-prima artist, meaning she tries to get everything in one go. She works a lot from direct observation, on location, plein air, and her goal seems to be to get the best impression in one go, A-la-prima, one kind of layer with adding in details as she goes along. She actually has an excellent demo here on YouTube that I will link somewhere around here that allows you to see this approach from start to finish as a part of Color in Your Life series. Through which you can see painting processes by Alvaro Kesney, Joseph Zbukvic, and David Taylor, and tons of other painters. So this is how I came across her stuff. But in any case, one thing that I think you can take from this lesson in particular, from this video in particular, is simplification, how to simplify your paintings, because you can really see that nothing is in excess in her work. In fact, it's quite minimalistic, but she is able to create that realistic impression that I personally love. She just says a lot with very few details, and all of her skills and all of her abilities shine through that, meaning she doesn't do that because she doesn't know how to do that. She actually reduces the details because that's her vision and that's how she likes to portray things. So I think it's a really good lesson in that, how to simplify, how to say less with more. And with that being said, let's get started. And I'm going to start with what I think is really one of the best paintings I've encountered by Amanda, which is this one. I find this to be especially fascinating because let's zoom out together with your permission and check it out. It's, to me, kind of photorealistic, perhaps, or maybe just realistic. I love how she treats the light and shadow here. And as I mentioned, in this episode, we're going to take it more to the extreme because there's a significant reduction in details. There's nothing here. Let's zoom in on some of the parts here. There's the boats. There's just small white spaces that were left for the highlights really fast. Some reflections here. A lot of light shining on the rooftops. There's this small sliver of dry brush here and there as well. This is people. Can you see the people here? Well, if we zoom out, it all makes sense. And this is, I think, something that's fairly hard to do. It may seem simple to just put in those red dots and that's people, but the dots are red in the context of the whole scene, of the whole light and shadow conditions. It's not just red dots. And this is incredibly important to understand. It takes really a sixth sense to develop that kind of way of simplifying what you see. It's not as straightforward as you may think it is, and it takes a lot of trial and error to figure out what reads properly. It's not as straightforward as it may seem. But anyway, this is really one of my favorite scenes here. I love the composition as well, and I love the fact that it's an aerial scene. I love these kinds of things. I love looking at aerial photography. So with painting, it's even better for me. I really enjoy every time I do an aerial painting, which I haven't done in a while, so maybe I should. So in any case, you have all of these buildings here, the roundness of this dock area, the sea outside. This part is surrounded by buildings. I love this big structure here in the middle, or several structures all stuck together and built on top of one another. Simply stunning. A few small reflections, stuff like that. Here you can see how the paint kind of bled, the blue here bled onto the water. So a very minimalistic technique. You can also see some opaque paint just for perhaps small details in the shadow, like these small brush strokes and swipes, maybe of gouache paint. Here as well, masts for the masts. Sorry, not musts. Masts for the boats here. It works really, really well. Next up, this is what I really like as well. Now, unfortunately, some of these are not as high res as I would love them to be, but still, you can read this really well, and I love these kinds of Arctic paintings. The series of Edward Seago of his Antarctica paintings are really among my favorites, and this one is as well. Really amazing. I mean, it's a different artist, but the way she treats all of the blues and all of the not turquoise, but ceruleans, I would say. There's just an awful lot of different blues here, and it looks good. And if the reflections don't necessarily even fully make sense, but they still read well. And I love the fact that this is a bit foggy or hazy or whatever it is. Next up, this one I really love. And again, I love these aerial scenes. So this is just a couple of, I don't know, horses, carriages, the side of a building. This looks like maybe Italian. I'm not sure, because these rooftops really characterize some places in Italy. Perhaps it could be just European in general, but I love that. And again, there's not an awful lot of details here. She makes heavy use of more opaque paint. As you can see, she mixes also white, I believe. There's a lot of white here. You can tell by the way this looks here. So yeah, a lot of the highlights aren't really possible to leave that way, so it's pretty obvious she used white paint. Also here on the rooftop, some dry brushing of white paint, and it looks fantastic. And if we zoom out, it almost has a photorealistic quality. Even, I would argue, more than the first painting I showed you, more than this one. Okay, this also has this very strong realism, but this one is something special, really, and I love that. The composition as well works fantastic. You know, I really like that. Let's see another one. This is interesting because with this painting, it almost feels like oil technique. Everything is so opaque and so used in small brush strokes, but it is watercolor, though. I did make sure, well, at least I think it is. It could be gouache, but it was under the watercolor category, I believe, in her website. So yeah, there's a lot of, I think these are maybe flags or maybe kind of lamps or some kind of posts, but in any case, it works really well. It is, in some senses, it may be a little, some would say it's too overworked with details, but I think that actually when you zoom out, and this is the ultimate test for me, is can you recognize large shapes? Can you recognize the sense of light and shadow and the feeling here? And I can definitely recognize it. The one thing that is too overworked for my personal taste is just the sky. It's a little like kind of cream white, and you can see all of the brush strokes that are characterized. When you use more opaque paint, I guess it's more visible. It could be that you wanted to lighten them up. I'm not sure. You can see the brush strokes of the sky here around the buildings as well. Hopefully you can see that. It's not my favorite on a personal kind of taste way, but I can appreciate the skill that went into it and her vision. I can definitely appreciate the vision. I would do the execution on the vision differently, but I can tell everything. Like, I can see the highlights on the people. It's really, really cool. So yeah, and there's a hint of a mountain here on the right. That just works well and frames it up. Next up, we have this little thing. I'm not sure where it is. Some places I do remember I checked, and I know from just personal knowledge. But in any case, again, another beautiful scene that if you zoom out enough, you start to figure out what's going on and where the light and shadow come from. And I think once in a while, it is nice to have that refreshing approach of even fewer details. You know, obviously, if you've been following my stuff, you know that I don't like as much these paintings that spell it out for you and show you every single detail. That's not the type of art I want to do, and it's not the type of art I enjoy the most. Even when looking at older art by old painting masters, like, you know, from previous centuries, I still don't like when they spell out everything literally. I love the more naturalistic approach. That I think the perfect manifestation of that would be something like Sargent's work. Even Van Gogh had a bit of that, but Sargent really is, to me, the epitome of that kind of way of representation of nature. You don't necessarily paint everything you see because the eye doesn't recognize everything it sees, so there's no need to paint everything. So this is another example of that, and I love that, and it works really well. And the composition, I like that this kind of statue here or sculpture is separate from the rest of the building. Just a lot of good stuff with this one. This I really like as well. First of all, I just like the way the light and shadow appear here. There's something I don't necessarily read fully, and that is I would say these white parts under the bridge. I'm trying to figure out their utility. I would say it's either the buildings that you see behind the bridge, or it feels to me almost like water foaming, which I don't think is what she meant. But in any case, what's really remarkable about this one, and you'll notice she does that a lot, is giving the background this very abstract quality. Like if we zoom in on the background, it's really abstract. It's one big lump of paint, negative painted around a lighter lump of paint. As you can see here, this is probably, I think I'm accurate here, there was this wash, the lighter wash here, and then she came on top of that with another darker, more warmer wash, which is interesting. She started with a gray and then came back with a cooler and then with a warmer on top of that, and then a few dots for windows and details and stuff like that, and it still reads very well. Now, when it doesn't matter what level you are, it is important to notice you don't go into the trap of representing buildings like that. You have to really observe your reference, and I think she does observe it. She won't automatically express buildings like that without observing the reference. And the evidence for that is if you look at different paintings by her, she does use that sometimes, but sometimes she won't. So that's fascinating. One more thing that I really noticed immediately with this painting is how she layered the masts of this boat or whatever that is with the dry brush, how it contrasts with the background, and it really makes them appear like they're closer to us. So there is a sense of depth created by this contradiction between these dry brush strokes and this wet, more how would I call that, more elusive background that you can't read fully. And then there's a tree here that provides a nice support and closure on the right of the painting, but it's still very much melted into, and sorry about the ambulance noise, it's still pretty much melted into the rest of the colors, and it's still wet and wet so that it doesn't grab too much attention from the masts, which are clearly pulling us downwards to the center of attention, which is this boat. And again, in the boat itself, not an awful lot of details. A lot of opaque paint you can see here, but not an awful lot of details. By the way, one thing I wanted to mention is I'll try to give my personal opinion as well as when I can, when there's something I can comment on. I don't like the color scheme of this painting and many other of her paintings, but I love the way she represents the subject. Okay, so I would choose different colors, but I love the impression that she's presenting with these. Here, this color choice I like a little more. And again, it's a beautiful, beautiful scene. If we just zoom out a little bit, you can really feel like you're there at the beach with this beautiful view. Maybe it's not as warm as super summer. Maybe it's later, close to the evening or late afternoon, so that it starts to cool a little. But I really get this sense, and this feels like rich people's houses, and how from the beach you can see them, and it just looks really cool to me. It's probably just a part of the neighborhood and not someone's like one big property, but yeah, it just reads so well. The boats here in the background and how she melts this blue into this shadow here. And notice how, again, there's a lot of small abstract details, but this one's not overworked in my opinion, and it works really well. And she also makes sure to show the individual colors sometimes, which is something I pay attention to a lot, meaning showing both the blue, well, it's not really both, all three. So blue, red, and yellows. And I find that in paintings where one is lacking, like I think this is a good example. You know what? I'm not sure. There's a bit of all of them, but it's mostly secondary colors. But when the primary colors are missing, I find that the painting lacks, to my personal taste. Next up, we have this. This is a Sacré-Cœur, I believe it's called, in Montmartre in Paris. I just shouldn't try to have any type of French accent. But in any case, going all the way up there. This is a bit of a gloomy day. When I was there, it was actually really sunny, really nice. But it's nice seeing a bit of a different approach to that. And, you know, a lot of people get in the lane of representing color the way they see it. I have that happen to me a lot when I'm trying to go for a similar color to what I see. But this really goes to show you, you don't have to do that. You don't have to use a color that's even close to the color you're seeing. Like, where's the blue of the sky? There's none, no blue. And even worse than that, some would say, the building has a very similar type of color with the sky. It's just a bit darker. So it's like breaking rules, but it looks amazing. It looks foggy. It looks mysterious even. And I loved it. And there's always tons of people here. So I love the way she expresses that. And it's almost, if you zoom in, it's almost childlike with the details. But that ability, and that's what she loves. She loves the A-la-prima approach of just putting it in there and reducing all unnecessary details, which I love. This one I really like, and I think it's, technically speaking, it's a really good piece of art. I haven't seen a lot of paintings like that in which the entire sky is kind of blocked by a net of objects. In this example, the wires and the ropes running around the boat. This is something that I have, I think, never really seen, the entire sky netted, and then through the nets you can see the horizon line of the ocean, or yeah, that's probably the ocean. It's silvery, and if we zoom out just a little, let's zoom out a lot, you can tell that it's really skillfully done. Look at all the wires running here with opaque paint in the darker areas. There's this person working on the ropes here, which I love. I personally love these scenes. She does a lot of marine time, you would call it, like boats and docks and the sea, which I absolutely love. Here's another one, boats on a dry dock with maybe a person here working on them. What I love about this one, again, this is kind of into the light scene, I would say. Maybe the sun is about to set and all the light is cast towards us. What I love about this is all of these, again, the lines running on the ground, maybe shadows for ropes, it may be the shadows of the boats. This nice gap here showing that the ship is extended into the air. Just a lot of like lifted, a lot of interesting things going on here that I love. I find it uses the opaque paint really well. Sometimes it can be overdone, it can be a little exaggerated. She does that very well and very sometimes muted, like this example here. And you can see it's not too much, it's just right. And one last thing I'll comment is the sky is beautiful, like clouds coming in or going away from us, indicating maybe there's a storm coming, maybe night's coming. Just a lot of nice things going on in this one. Let's see what else we got here. Okay, so unfortunately, these are lower resolution, but they're beautiful. So let me zoom out a bit because it's way too low of a resolution. Check it out. It's just beautiful. This is sunset. The sun is barely visible. You can see that by the shadows cast here and by the very high contrast. You have this yellowy area on this kind of dock, and then, or whatever it is, this arm that protrudes out of the beach, maybe to protect the boats, and then you have all of these sharp shadows that follow the shape of that wall, which is really nice. You see this, the line moves up and then right and then up and then right. It really follows the shape of the wall. This is probably shadows cast by the masts of the boats. A bit of opaque paint here to indicate the masts that are in the shadow. Then we have these houses that are in the shadow, and then some that are still well lit, and you get these sharp horizontal shadows that I personally find incredible. And these are, again, things that are easy to use as a gimmick, but they're actually they take a lot of skill to utilize in the right way. And then if we zoom out a bit, all of the composition works really well. We have these wavy areas here. Notice this is interesting. We have the water wash, and then we have this lighter color kind of ripples in the water, and then we have the darker ripples here with darker blue, very subtle, barely visible, that I think work really well. And then notice this coastline that's almost feels golden, though it's probably closer to green, brown, I would say, but it's almost golden in its feeling of strong sunlight. Beautiful, beautiful scene. Let's see what else we have here. Another small one that I love. Again, you can't see too much of the details because it's a bit of a lower resolution, unfortunately. I tried finding larger versions of the same paintings but couldn't. But again, beautiful the way she leaves all these gaps to indicate that there's mountains, houses on the mountainside. Here we have some more buildings, some boats. Maybe it looks like a swampy or lower hanging kind of water reservoir, which is really interesting. Just the way it works and the creation of the sensation of depth with this farther ridge that captures most of the sky area almost. You look at this. This is all of the sky area, and then this takes up almost all of it, which is really good. This is a bit of a unique scene. We haven't seen a lot of these here, and just kind of a rainy day in a European. I don't know if this is London or something else, maybe even Rome. I couldn't tell, but just love that the treatment, the people of the with the umbrellas, the gaps here in the building work really well. It all works well. A lot of small details suggested in the background. This statue is beautiful. A lot of skill is necessary to create that so that the top part of the statue doesn't grab your attention too much. Once again, you have that, and then this pole here, and it starts very light and silvery or even golden, and then it goes down and it becomes darker and darker and darker. I love the way she does that. One more thing that really adds to that is the red shirts on some of the people and the red umbrella here. It kind of creates a nice, interesting balance. And one thing that I would do differently is the street light, which is funny enough, pink or purple. I don't know what that is. It doesn't work for me as well, but considering the rest of the scene, it looks amazing. And if we zoom out, it still looks amazing, and there's a feeling of everything is there. Everything you need is there. The people that are up close, the people that are further in the background, the buildings, everything works really well. Another really nice scene, too bad I don't have a high resolution, but we're going to wrap it up in a moment with really, really beautiful a really beautiful piece. But again, notice the abstraction of the buildings here, just some negative painting of these this foliage-filled area, and then some squares for the windows. That's all you really need. This dry brush stroke here and there. Compositionally, it works really well. You have this rounded part and then this sharp edge, and it kind of leads you in, pulls you into the main area of interest. This supports it very nicely. All of these wires running around. This is just help you kind of lead you into the main boat here. I think it works really well. And we're getting close to the end. This is another beautiful piece. Very small hint of people here. I love that there is a larger part of the watery area, or maybe ocean, or I don't know what that is, kind of a dry lake or river, and then there's a smaller one here, and the balance created is really nice. You've got this main structure, kind of a fort or something like that, but it doesn't even take that much attention here. Most of the attention is the movement of the people coming towards it or back from it, visiting it, which is really nice. And then you get these diagonal, beautiful, beautiful shadows. And this is what happens when you go a-la-prima. You get these quick results that are so full of life, even more than any studio work could accomplish. Here we have the Eiffel Tower. Eiffel? I'm never sure how to pronounce it. We say Eiffel in Hebrew. But in any case, love that thing. Just piece of metal, and it's funny how it's not that main of an attraction when you actually visit Paris, but it's kind of stuck in there somewhere. But notice, I love the brown here on the trees. There's a lot to pull out of here to love. And again, there's always interest in the foreground as well. She always makes sure to do that. So we have the stairs here, the shadows that are cast by whatever that is. You always have to make sure that you have interest. If you didn't have all of the bottom part, then you just have the tower in the middle, but it would be lacking. There won't be anything to lead you into the picture, and here there definitely is, and I think that works really well. One before the last, I love everything that has to do with her countryside or rural scenes. I love how she portrays trees. She has a very good control of the values too, so you get this nice feeling of scale and depth. Both of these, you can sense that this kind of a road traveling upwards, but it doesn't take away from the center of attention. There's a lot of things going on in a more abstract manner, but it still works really well in the context of the rest of the painting. Notice how dark this
pile of trees or tree is, compared to the things in the background that are a little more pale and really are sent to the back. Even the houses, notice this house here and this house here, and then if you go a little to the back, it starts to lighten up, and I love that. And it's very immediate. It's just her impression, and that's it. And I love that. And this is probably, this is the last one. Just decided to leave it to the end. I think it may be the same place we've seen here, though I'm not sure. I don't think it's the same place, but it's very similar and resembles it. But in any case, this large tower or fortress just looks beautiful, and these hints of tiny people coming and visiting it, good sense of light and shadow, good, she fills in the details that you actually need to feel like this is a complete scene, but not too much more than that. And I love how the massiveness of this human-made structure contrasts with notice the horizon line is very relaxed, and it's very flat and blue, almost kind of green blue. So nature in this example is very calm and serene and peaceful, and then the people-made structure is like big and massive in the middle of the scene, and she's not afraid to put it right in the middle, almost in the middle, maybe towards the upper half, but still just gorgeous. And there isn't any reflection. Notice that's an interesting thing, which could happen when the sunlight hits the scene in a bit of a different manner and it reflects more of the sky rather than the subject. This could happen, and you don't even question it. It just looks good. I'm really considering if it would have looked better with reflection. I'm not sure at all. So in any case, this is it. I really hope you enjoyed this one. I wanted to start with a really strong one and end on a really strong note. I hope you learned something new from this, mainly that you can reduce a lot of the details you see and just focus on the essence. And it's up to us to figure out that essence. So with that being said, let's wrap up this video face to face.
So this is it. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. I didn't mention in the intro that Amanda is a part of the 20 Melbourne Artists Society, which is fun. It's just the 20 leading watercolor painters, including Greg Allen and others. So she's a part of that. I hope you learned something new from this episode. I certainly have, and I will have that in mind, especially when painting outside and being bombarded by details. Everything all around you, and you have to really think carefully about what you put in and what you leave out, because that's going to have a huge impact on the impression that you provide for the viewer. And it's our job to make life easier for the viewer and tell them, this is what I want you to focus on, and this part I want you to do, and this is how I want your eye to travel on the painting, as much as we can to the extent of our abilities. So I want to thank you so much. Don't forget, if you enjoyed this video, give it a like. This actually really helps YouTube share the video with more people, and I do try to reach as many people as possible. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell button to receive notifications for new videos when they're out. I want to thank you so much for sticking around and watching this series. I really appreciate it. There's tons of previous episodes to check out if you still haven't, in which I talk about all sorts of different painting masters, and showing not only watercolor but also oils occasionally and stuff like that. So thank you once again, and I will see you again in another vid real soon.